Welcome back to another episode of the Next Level Minds podcast. My name is Chris Chapman, and I am your host. For those of you who are tuning in for the first time, this is a podcast dedicated to those who want to reach a next level in their business, personal, or career life. Every other week, I'm blessed to sit down with a fully qualified guest, entrepreneur, content creator, or mover and shaker in their industry and walk through their story of how they have gotten from point A to point B and overcame various adversities along the way. Now, before we dive into today's episode, I just wanted to reiterate my main goal, which is to impact over 1 million people by helping them reach a next level. So if you have not done this already, please take the time to subscribe to Next Level Minds on Apple Podcast. Share this episode with a family member, friend, or colleague. And if you're really feeling special, leave a review on the Apple Podcast app and let me know what you think. Also, huge thank you to everyone out there who has made reviews. Literally in probably a week or two, I've gotten about 10 new podcast reviews. So for those out there that have been making reviews of the show, definitely appreciate that. Other than that, going into today's episode, wanted to introduce today's guest. I'm sitting down with Evan Sammet, who was the founder of Ticket Insider. And I say was because he was fortunate to actually sell his business at a very young age. His business was a ticket reselling company that definitely exploded the entertainment industry. Since then, he is the vice president of purchasing at Key Investment Group. So in today's episode, we're just going to sit down and really chat about a lot of lessons that he learned from starting his business, scaling his business, selling his business, and really the whole 9 yards there. I'm super pumped to sit down with Evan. I know he's super passionate about what he does, and I'm confident he's going to bring that to the table today. Other than that, as we like to say here at Next Level Minds, your mindset is your greatest weapon for the battle of success. Evan, I really appreciate you taking the time to hop on the Next Level Minds podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man, absolutely. How's the day treating you so far?
Everything's going well. We had our first snow today in Washington, D.C. of the year. So, taking out the shovels. But besides that, all's good.
Yeah. You think that'll stick around for Christmas or not really?
No, I'm thinking they already say it's supposed to rain later in the night or rain tomorrow. So hopefully that washes it away.
Yeah.
Most of it away.
I would say you probably didn't have to go into the office today, but everyone's already working from home. So
yeah, my friend said that last night. He goes, "I'm waiting for it to snow." And then my other buddy goes, "Why? We're all working from home anyway. It's not like you could text your boss
that's funny.
that you're not coming in."
I think too, with like the kids in school, it's like not even exciting anymore because they're already doing the online virtual home learning type of thing.
Yeah, they're already doing the virtual home, and now that they're home, their parents are probably gonna go make them shovel. They're probably like, yes, finally the one day it benefits me to have my kids home.
Yeah, no, the parents are pumped up, but the kids are like, man, I got to do these chores now.
They're like, yeah, but my teacher's really making me stay online the whole day today. I'm not going to really have time for that.
Yep. No, that's funny. Well, Evan, before we dive into your story a little bit more, man, I would just love if you could just give some highlights of things that you're pumped about going into 2021.
Live entertainment. That's number one. But first and foremost, all the shows I wanted to go to this summer got postponed to next summer. Luke Bryan, Jason Aldean, Thomas Rhett, big country fan, not only because I'm in the business, but the reason I got into the business is because I love live entertainment. So I'm excited for that to come back. I'm excited for New York Giant football to finally be live again. They're starting to actually win a couple games, so to go to some games next year, and I'm psyched.
Hey, at least you're not a Jets fan, so.
No, that's my friends who are Jets fans root for them to lose just for the promise of for Trevor Lawrence. Yep. I know that being a Clemson guy, that probably you probably don't even want to see him go to the Jets.
No, I don't at all. But yeah, to your point about live entertainment, I'm excited as well. I mean, I bought some Jimmy Buffett tickets in early 2020. It was supposed to happen in April. Now it's pushed to think May or something of 2021. So I'm pumped to flip the tickets I bought and actually go to the show. So.
Yeah, there's so much out there. Everyone's really excited. There's so much pent up demand to start going to live entertainment, going to shows, going to games, going to comedy shows. And one thing we learned is, as cool as it is to watch YouTube videos or virtual shows, it just doesn't have the same ring as the live entertainment. I mean, the lights, the crowd, the energy, the noise. As good as your speakers are, it can't match speakers in arenas or amphitheaters.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think too, with like the people you're with, I think adds a lot of good vibes to it as well.
Yeah, and there's the whole overall experience. I know that my friends and I, when we go to a show, we rent a party bus.
Yeah.
We get 15, 20 people. We're all sitting together. We're playing in the parking lot before. We bring subs. I mean, there's so much to going to an event that is more than the event itself, which adds on to the experience and adds on to really show why that the virtual is just not the same.
Right. No, yeah, I totally agree. I think that collaboration and kind of like the Vince pre-show are super important.
Yeah, exactly. And it's that, and then it's getting the videos, and then bumping the music home on your car ride home, and then showing your friends the next day, or posting an Instagram story, or posting a photo the next day. It's just there's so much that goes on. That's just there's so much that goes on besides that just 2 hours of entertainment, that when we're finally allowed out, whenever that is, and when we're allowed to go to full shows at full capacity and full lights and all that stuff, it's going to be mayhem.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm one of those people that's got that pent up demand right now. So totally agree with you on that. But yeah, Evan, I know I touched on this when I was introducing you. I know you started Ticket Insider, and obviously sold it, and now you're VP of purchasing for a successful company out of DC. I mean, I would love if you could just let the listeners know kind of your story, your background a little bit before we dive into some more questions.
Yeah, so I started Ticket Insider in 2013 when I was a sophomore at Quinnipiac University. Really took a big risk and started a business. As I said earlier, I'm really into live entertainment and going to games growing up. And my first real memory is going to see Bon Jovi when I was 15 years old.
Nice.
And just the way that made me feel, and the energy that I have still talking about it, whatever it is, 12 years later, is unmatched. So I know at that time I said, okay, I always wanted to start a business. And a lesson that I learned kind of later on is take a risk if you're in college. Just do it, because it's not going to come back and hurt you. If anything, if the business fails or the risk that you take doesn't work, you can at least show to recruiters or headhunters right out of school, hey, I have 2 years, 3 years work experience, more than just the classroom experience. And you can kind of start tapping into connections. So even if my business didn't work and I had lost all this money and so on and so forth, if I was looking for a job right out of school, I could have tapped into those connections and said, hey guys, you guys know me, you know my personality, we've been working together for the past 2-3 years. Yeah, maybe this business didn't work, but I'm happy, you guys know my work ethic, let me come work for you, type thing. And hopefully they would have said yes. So I start this business in college, I grow it, I actually get off to a much quicker success than probably most businesses do. And I end up taking some of it for granted. I stopped doing my homework. I start putting in the same times. I would kind of equate it to buying a stock. Let's say you buy, 2 stocks right away and they both happen to go up 15%. And you're thinking, wow, the stock picking thing's pretty easy. Let me just buy any stock that sounds good. That's kind of how it worked with me with tickets. And then the next 2 shows or 3 shows that I bought ended up being disasters. So that was my first real lesson that I learned was, never take anything for granted. Always put in the same amount of homework. And even back then, Howard Stern was a big idol of mine and still is. And he still prepares for every interview, hours and hours and hours. And learning from him and learning from someone like the best, always be prepared, over prepared, really helps save the business and not go off a cliff. And then just started gradually just growing the business. Every dollar that I was making, I was putting right back into the business. And I never took any outside capital, which was a blessing for me because it really made me work harder and make sure that every decision I was going to do was something that I was willing to put my own money behind. And if I wasn't willing to put my own money behind it, then it wasn't good enough. And I feel that if I took outside capital, I might have been a lot more loose with it. So I might have been able to grow, but, I might have had more sales, but the margins might have not been the same.
Yeah. No, that makes sense because you had more skin in the game. So you're obviously inclined to work harder there.
Exactly. And sometimes I see, people take money from family. And while, I was fortunate enough that had I asked my parents and I begged them, they would have given me, a couple $1,000s to start off. Being able to have mentors and being able to have someone who you can really ask advice for, but knowing that they don't have financial skin in the game, they're just looking to help you, is something that can't be bought, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree. And so with Ticket Insider, that was just reselling popular concert tickets, correct?
Yeah, that was, it was really getting deals with different vendors and promoters and working on sports too and inking season ticket deals with teams, always looking for something that I thought was undervalued and trying to buy it while it's low. So, a common misconception, at least in our business, is why don't you just buy tickets for the Golden State Warriors or Clemson football or Alabama football? Well, you've already maxed out. Alabama and Clemson football, they're already as popular as they get. So when you're buying the ticket, you're already buying at a skyrocketed price. A better chance is, I know you're a Clemson guy, would be like buying tickets for the Gamecocks or something. They're okay. They have some good games, some bad games. But maybe if they have a new coach coming in and they have recruits coming in that in 2 to 3 years, they're going to be much better. So if you can, in a sense, ink a deal and say, okay, let me buy tickets today, knowing I can lock in these seats, for a little bit of time, late down the road, you're going to start seeing huge dividends.
So is ticket sales or resales more like trading stocks kind of? That's kind of a similar example?
I honestly, it's a perfect example. I mean, I look at, and the best thing for me is it hasn't really hindered my love of events, but I have to look at artists and sports teams like stocks. Are they overvalued? Are they undervalued? Are they properly valued? For example, a tour going on right now is Justin Bieber, and Justin Bieber, everyone knows at least 5 to 7 of his songs. So he needs to really grow and be able for you to see, 20, 30, 40, 50% markups that you would need. You need to think that he has much more popularity in him. Or you need to think that he has 2, 3, 4 number one radio songs that are going to open him up to a new audience who might not already know him. And in my opinion, I have to just keep listening to his music and say, do I believe he's going to exponentially get bigger? Because his ticket price is already priced in.
So a lot of it, just like the stocks, is kind of all about perception of the person, correct?
Correct. And it's all about perception of the person. If you're looking at a Broadway show, all about perception of the show. If you're looking at a sports team, all about perception of the teams. And, as I stated earlier, why don't you just buy Kansas City Chiefs tickets? Well, the Chiefs know that they could sell their tickets for whatever they want. So, you're already late on, in my opinion, buying tickets for the Chiefs would be like buying Zoom stock today. You might already be late. Zoom is already, risen in popularity. It might be better to buy a team, like the Jets. They're 0-12. They might get Trevor Lawrence as the first pick. It's not priced in. They don't have any demand today. So you buy tickets. Maybe you say, I'll buy tickets for 3 years if they allow that. You take a little bit of loss on year one, and then you hope by, somewhere down the road that, they'll help you turn a profit.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I think a lot of it, like you mentioned, is looking at future trends, which I think is kind of cool too. And, I like looking at stock trends, but you're looking at, cool artists and different sports teams, so you can actually enjoy yourself while you're looking at these trends.
Yeah, you know, it's so funny. It's one of those things where, and I used to have people work for me, and it's fine when your boss allows you to have Spotify up on the screen or allows you to have the NFL standings up on the screen, because, you know, you can kind of say, well, I'm looking at the projections for a team, or I'm looking at their, you know, points for and points against to see if they're actually that good. Or, you know, I'm looking at, you know, I'm listening to something, you know, I'm listening to this song to see if they're good, or I'm listening to this podcast to see if it's funny and see if this guy might go on the road or something.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool when you know, you're able to use your screens for entertainment.
Yeah. Did you ever have anybody like try to call off, like, hey, I was at work watching Sunday football too long, and you know, Monday's not working?
Yeah, I was really, you know, like an NFL coach, I'm really just watching watching the film. But yeah, I used to have one guy who worked for me, and you know, he's awesome, and you know, he really killed it, and you know, ended up going on and, you know, getting another job. But it's funny. He would just, you know, always be listening to new music, and like I'd always see him online just shifting songs. And he'd be like, "Oh, I'm listening to, you know, this to see if they, you know, they're going to be popular on the road." But he used to play his music so loud through his headphones that I was able to hear he was listening to a band who, you know, hasn't been on the road in like 2 years.
Oh my God.
So I knew he was just making it up. But you know, it's like kind of, you know, it's funny stuff like that where, you know, you're just able to laugh at it.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. That's cool. So you mentioned like you went to that Bon Jovi show, and I mean, you're super pumped up, and that's something you like still talk about to this day. So I know that's kind of what got you into the ticket side of things, but I mean, what got you, were you always like entrepreneurial growing up and everything, or where did that kind of stem from?
So I'm not sure if I was always entrepreneurial. I always loved to work. And, you know, growing up, I was an umpire, and I was a baseball umpire. And I remember one summer I umpired 60 games. And I wouldn't really say being an umpire was starting my own business, because it wasn't, but I controlled my own hours and I controlled the game. So if I said, okay, I know that, and again, this is, you know, always looking back, hindsight 2020, I always wanted to be the home plate umpire. I never wanted to umpire the bases because I felt I wasn't in control of the game. Behind the plate, I always felt like I was controlling the game and controlling the benches and, you know, moving the flow of the game. So I think I always had a work ethic that I wanted to be my own boss. I didn't do any paper deliveries. I know you always hear like Mark Cuban, you know, I did paper deliveries, you know, someone, you know, entrepreneurs, they sell trash bags. I never really started a business like that, but I used to give tennis lessons. So I always liked to work for myself. And I always had a work ethic outside of the classroom. And I was never the best student, but I never felt hindered or disturbed by that, because I knew once I got out of the classroom, it wasn't like I was sitting around playing video games. I wanted to go work on something.
Yeah, no, that work ethic, like you mentioned, so cool to see. You know, working for something, even if it's in high school, making $8 an hour, and then actually like making that money yourself and being able to buy something, I think is just such a great feeling.
Yeah, and again, and I said this a little bit earlier, but if you start something and you have a good work ethic that you can relay into a story to prove why you did that, like I'm able to tell you why I was an umpire. If you looked at someone's resume and they said umpire, you wouldn't think, okay, I need to hire this person, or that person's a can't miss candidate. But if you then go into the story and say, hey, I was an umpire because I was able to control my own hours, I was able to get as many games as I want, which meant I was always able to work. I wanted to work my way up, so I worked the top league so I could be with the best baseball players. You know, if you can get a job or start a business that gives you a story that you can share and promote, like I'm, you know, in a sense, like I'm doing here right now, right. Take that opportunity. Don't take something just because you think it pays a lot of money.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think like a lot of times when you're young, you just want to take the job that has the best paycheck. But I mean, you got to think about all those other factors. Like, hey, what story is this going to play? Who am I going to meet? Who am I going to impact? And I think that could honestly pay like better dividends down the road than just a slightly higher paycheck.
Yeah, one lesson that I learned from my boss, you know, at Key Investment Group is time value of money and what money really is in the grand scheme of things, in the big picture and small picture. So, if someone's listening is like, okay, I'm going to take a job for $13 an hour. And, depending on what age you are, $13 to $15 an hour, if you're in high school or in early college, is, a pretty healthy paycheck. But then if you have that opportunity to take an unpaid internship or start a business that might costing a little money, the ceiling is higher in that position than it is in the $13 to $15 position. So if you're saying, wow, in the short term, I really might lose out on $5,000 or $10,000, and not to come off, as in money is really not important, because money is important. But in the long run, $5,000 isn't going to make or break you. In that opportunity that you could take, that's an unpaid internship or something that might develop your skills further, might skyrocket you to make $30,000 more, 30, 40,000, 50,000, even, just sky's the limit. So take an opportunity or take a position or start something that allows you to, really skyrocket your paying what you're able to make.
Yeah, no, I love that point too, because I think a lot of people are unfortunately thinking short term. I think, like, I read something the other day, you are where you are right now because of decisions you made 3 to 5 years ago. So I think in those type of decisions, thinking about it, like, hey, where could this lead me in 5 years? Like you mentioned, that could lead me an extra $30K or an extra networking opportunity. So I think that's super important to keep in mind, like you mentioned.
Yeah, and never be afraid to start something. I always say too, everyone has time. There's, and, I don't want to say there's 24 hours in a day, you could work all 24 hours. Well, we know that's unreasonable, but everyone has an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, every so often to really put your time into something. So if you can devote your time to something, especially if it doesn't cost you money and all it costs you is time, if it goes wrong, you didn't lose anything. It's really not that big of a deal.
Yeah. And to your point there, I mean, I think it's important to audit your time too. Just where is it actually going?
Completely agree. If you're missing out an hour of Netflix or missing out on the second quarter of a regular season basketball game, you're not losing that much.
Yeah, no, I agree. You touched on this like earlier, and you kind of touched on it just now about just taking risk. I mean, what advice would you have out there to somebody who may be like a little scared to take a risk, whether it's starting their own business, making a career jump, just because I think risk and fear like that holds a lot of people back.
My biggest advice for that would be, when it's not going the way you originally planned, stick with your gut. If you're going to take a risk on something because you truly believe that what you are risking is worth it. If you're building a product or starting a business and one or two people don't understand it, don't get down on yourself to where you need to quit. I had so many people when I was starting up in college, and mostly family friends, saying, well, this ticket thing looks like a good hobby, but it's really not going to amount to anything full time. And I had an internship opportunity my junior year of college at a financial firm, and I didn't take it to work on the business. And everyone thought I was, stupid, crazy, moronic, just saying, why would you give up? And this was a financial firm that everyone listening knows. And they would say, why didn't you take it? This is such a good guaranteed position. And I had belief that live entertainment is the future. People being live. Everything right now that you do can be recorded. Live entertainment is the only thing that doesn't have that feel.
Right.
And I believe that. I understood where social media was going, and I knew I wasn't going to create an app, but I knew if someone posted a picture of themselves at a show, or someone posted, a video of themselves at a show, people would get the fear of missing out and need to go to that show, or need to go to another show, or need to, join them the next time their friend goes to a show. And I truly had that belief, and I was able to stick to my guns, and it's the smartest thing I've ever done.
Yeah, no, that's so cool that you were like, you just kind of like tuned out the noise that was happening to you and kept going towards your goal.
Yeah. And, I hate to use like, I don't like to use Uber success stories. I know Airbnb's been, in the news a lot now. And, you see early emails of, people who turned down the seed rounding or the Series A when Airbnb was looking to raise, a couple $1,000,000. And, there are so few businesses that are started like Airbnb. So I don't really want to, compare a story to that. But even if you're starting a business that, is going to make $5,000 a month, you know what? Who cares? Because maybe 5,000, maybe it turns into 10,000. Right. And if it's something you love to do, then you're going to bust yourself and work harder than you would for a normal job. And you're going to enjoy yourself more.
Yeah. And like, I think enjoying yourself more long term is actually probably going to equal higher income because you have more motivation.
Yeah. Again, especially, right now, working from home and, where we are in COVID, it's so hard to find motivation out there. I mean, I haven't left my house in 2 days. It's very, very difficult sometimes to find motivation just being in your house. And if you're working at a job where you really don't like what you're doing, it must be torture. At least if you have a job or you own a business, that you look forward to waking up every day and start working on. I know there's countless nights where I go to bed dreaming about entertainment. That's what I dream about. I dream about work. And some people think it's crazy and other people think it's, I think it's admirable that's what I'm passionate about. So, I think you can't put a price on caring about what you do. Work.
I like that. That's a big value add too. Like I think the listeners should implement, especially like you didn't even like you mentioned work from home. I mean, you kind of can't escape it if you don't like it. You close your laptop and then you just go to the couch.
Yeah, I mean, and luckily I live with a big group of friends and not in an apartment. We have a pretty big house, but I know, I have a couple buddies who, are accountants. And again, as an accountant, you make a solid living. You'll always have a job. You'll always be able to put your roof over your head, but they're miserable.
Right.
And I'm in a business right now that I think has been hurt more than restaurants. Everyone talks about restaurants, being the most hurt business of the pandemic, but you can still do takeout. They still have in some areas 25, 50% seating. So at least you can make some money. We make our money on arenas and stadium shows, and there's none of that going on. But I'm still passionate and eager to wake up every day and start planning for when shows do come back. What do we want to target? Because we know that there's going to be more demand than ever before, and we're ready to get ahead of that. And I work hard every single day knowing that, there's not going to be another show for minimum 3 to 4 months. And that's on the very, very, that's on the very, very optimistic side because that's the type of person I am.
What keeps you going, I guess, then? Just loving what you do, or?
I felt like we got knocked off a cliff. And the worst part is at our company, I feel like we got knocked off a cliff that, had nothing to do with us. It was not our fault. There was nothing we could do about it. And our best 3 months as a company ever was December 2019, January 2020, and February 2020. We were just rolling, streamline, arrow straight up. And now here we are at the bottom of the cliff. And there's nothing that I want more than to ride it out with my team at Key Investments Group and, make it back to the top of the cliff. And every single day, even though the work is different, every single day we at least put in work that when we come back, we'll better position ourselves to get back to where we believe is the top.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot. I read an article, I think it was on your LinkedIn page, about, you mentioned like when you first started your business in college, you missed out on some parties and social events. What was that like? Because I think you also touched on it too. People like concerts because of the fear of missing out. So I'm sure you had that. I mean, how did you deal with that?
Well, it was very interesting because I decided, and again, looking back and being a 19-year-old, I threw all my money that I had into concerts, which at the time was roughly around $6,000. So going to a party, going out to a nice dinner, spending $100, or using that money to buy concert tickets.
Yeah.
Using that money to put it, using that time, putting in a little extra work after hours. And I decided that I got more enjoyment from working than I did from certain social events. And if that's wrong, then so be it. But I knew that when I went out and I didn't truly want to be there, and I knew I was spending more money than I really wanted to, or I had work that really needed to get done, I truly couldn't enjoy myself because my mind was somewhere else.
Yeah.
So yeah, it hurt a little bit, but I knew that at that time I was making the right decision, or the decision that ultimately just helped the business grow.
Yeah. And like, that's a good point. I think it's important to be present in your situation. And I'm sure it's not worth it to go, spend $100 to go to a social event, but then you're just not there mentally the whole time.
Yeah. And, there are certain ways that, I know you enjoy hosting this podcast, and we're talking about it before. And, let's say, we're recording this at night, and you get a text, let's say half an hour before we start recording, and you say, hey, you want to go meet up for happy hour we're recording at 6 p.m. Do you want to meet up at 6 o'clock at night? Part of you might want to go, but if you're mentally going to be thinking about this conversation and mentally thinking about making the podcast grow to where you want it to grow to, then the decision is to stay home and work on your craft. If you're looking to put more money into better sound technology, better equipment, maybe reaching out, and I don't know if this is a thing, but possibly paying a guest to come on the show. If you have the option of discretionary income between buying a couple drinks at a bar, or buying a steak, or getting that guest, to growing your brand, if the answer is not growing your brand or growing your business, then you're not passionate enough about what you're doing.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's like a thing that people can do in their mind if they're struggling. Like, should I go get the beer? Should I do this? And I think if you're passionate about what you do, then I think the decision is going to fall on that the whole time.
Yeah, and and again, and my advice is also stay off social media when you make those decisions, because it definitely makes the decisions a little easier. But see if there are other ways in your mind that you can compromise. For example, I know that, at certain times I didn't want to go out and spend that much money. So to kind of make it up, I would bring food in, or go to the store and get drinks versus, which equated to 75 cents a drink versus $6 a drink, or whatever the math was. And, being able to have a release, because having a release is important, because if you overthink or overburn yourself out, then you're going to end up doing more harm than good. But be able to find different experiences that you can enjoy that might fit your budget. And if you look long term, I've been fortunate enough, especially at a young age, that I've been very successful, that I can now afford certain luxuries in life that I wasn't able to afford 6-7 years ago.
Right. And I think you just made a good point too about, again, thinking long term. This decision is going to compound effect down the road. And also think, if they're your true friends and you're missing out on a situation or a social event, I think it's just being honest. Like, hey, man, I got this business I'm doing. I need to stay in tonight to grow ABC.
Yeah, and you never want to burn bridges as well. And and pick and choose your events. If it's your best friend's birthday party, then go to the event. Put work aside, come home and work when you get home, or work late the night before. But if it's just another Thursday night out, then maybe grow your business. Pick and choose selectively, and that even comes to the business world too. Pick and choose the clients that you work with. Pick and choose what's really going to help you, because if you end up trying to do too much, same thing that almost happened to me, you try to do everything, you might end up losing it all.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Can you touch on that a little bit? Just doing too much, or?
Yeah, so I think I touched on it a little bit earlier, but I just decided, okay, the best way to scale up my business is just buy more. And that wasn't the case. It wasn't buying more. It was buying more of the right things. And, if you have you're looking at what's going, being able to be purchased this week or today, and you don't find anything this day that you think is good value, you don't have to spend money today. Maybe save some money, sell off some existing assets, which in my mind were tickets. So when something good really does get announced, or something good does come across the table from a promoter, or a venue has a deal that they want to pitch you, you're able to put more money behind that because you didn't blow money on something that, you're going to have money out for a while.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Was that hard to realize that at all for that, or?
I learned the lesson very quickly.
Yeah.
Because I hit on something early, and tickets are different. We talk about tickets being a lot like stocks, but if you buy Amazon stock, and you buy a share of Amazon stock, it has a value today, and tomorrow you can sell it to someone. It's always a liquid within 10 seconds.
Right.
Tickets are not that way. If no one's buying tickets for this, if an event does not have enough demand, if you're thinking of something early and you're saying, okay, I need for this to become really good, I need to wait till this team gets good, or and that might be 6 months away. You might need to hold on to your asset for 6 months. It doesn't have much value today. It doesn't have really any much more value than you paid for it. And you could be investing in the future, it could have less value. So, really selectively picking out where you want to spend your money. If you're in a clothing business, the idea might not be to make 20 different t-shirts, because maybe 80% of your sales come from the same 4 shirts. So don't spend all your money on 20. Just buy the 4 that are selling great and keep working on selling those. And then you'll be able to save some of your money. And then when you have more money to spend on your next big idea or your next big product line, then, there's where you can invest your money. If there's so many different businesses that rely on you spending more money, just like this business, in the ticket business, where you have to spend the money first before you see a large return. Then, think about selectively where you're spending money.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I guess on a funny note, I've had these dang Jimmy Buffett tickets for like a year and a half. So that's a good point about not being able to liquefy them.
Yeah. And now, and the COVID, we hope, is never going to happen again, or there's an event that magnifies like this. But you right now have an asset that, for probably at this very moment, is not worth what you paid for it. So you need to wait in time to liquidate and get money back for that asset. Now, I don't want to, but let's say you spent for 2 tickets $160 each per ticket, then that might be $300 where you could put to better use or to help grow something else. So in this business, one of the biggest barrier to entry into the ticket business is you have to have a lot of money to spend upfront, or you have to grow very small and very organically, like I did with my business at the beginning. And then the benefit of me joining Key Investment Group was we had some money behind us and we were able to grow at a larger scale.
No, that's really cool. And to your point too about growing, I read something the other day about, I think 80% of the results are done by 20% of the people, products, or services. I think that goes back to that point you made earlier as well.
Yeah, I know, for example, I go out to eat to a lot of restaurants, and you look at a restaurant and they have 100 different things on the menu if you go to a diner, but do people order 30% of the things on the diner, or are they breaking even on those products? If they have a dish that's the best dish of the house that 50% of the people order, should they be spending more ingredients on that dish and pushing it out? You could spend so much money on just random things, and everyone thinks more is more, but sometimes more is less, and sometimes less is more.
That's a really good point. And you messaged me a while back before we scheduled this. You messaged me on LinkedIn about how you kind of have shifted during COVID and innovative. I mean, what's some ways that you've just been able to innovate in your business, especially with how the ticket industry is getting affected?
The biggest way we've been able to pivot is we've had to look at ourselves as entertainment experts, not ticketing experts, and say, okay, well, because the ticket business isn't what it used to be, and this was looking back a couple months ago, what are things that are going to sell? Memorabilia. Everyone right now is looking at in-home collectibles, and just because you can't go out, so you're spending more money on in-the-home goods. And while we don't think that's going to be permanent, we think that it's a good bridge for us to at least keep ourselves positive, keep ourselves cash flow positive, so when we do come back. And we've also had to understand that it's not the same for us, that it's just a lifeline for us. That we understand that what we spent on a given day in tickets, that doesn't mean we're going to spend that much on a given day in memorabilia and hope to pull the same results, because we found it just for us we're still not as knowledgeable, but we've been able to be knowledgeable enough to pick and choose, different athletes that we think are going to be popular, that, their signed jerseys or their baseball cards or, any jersey cards or autographed guitars or things of that nature are going to grow because they're only going to get more and more popular.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm sure you've seen this as well. I mean, look at some of these Beanie Babies and baseball cards. I mean, dang, those are going for a lot.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing we're seeing basketball cards, especially now Michael Jordan when the Last Dance. When the Last Dance came out. I mean, there's some Jordan cards going for $100,000 easily for a card. And I even look at it like at least when you go to a show, you have, entertainment. I don't know what a card gets you, but that just might mean I'm not the ideal customer, and that's fine.
When I saw like some of these cars just going for crazy prices, I like literally called my mom. I'm like, hey, do you have my old sports card like binder? And I like finally found it, and it's just a bunch of like, remember the Sports Illustrated for Kids magazines?
Yes,
it's just a bunch of those like cheap cutout ones. I'm like, man.
Well, it's so funny. I actually got the other call. I got a call from my dad. When was this? In like June or July. He's like, hey, what's going on? And he's like, hey, are you watching this Last Dance documentary? And I go, yeah, it's phenomenal. He goes, I think I have a Michael Jordan card in the basement. Like, can you see what it's worth? And I'm like, sure, I'll look it up. And he sends me a picture of the card, I reach out to a couple people. It ended up being like one of those cards, and exactly like Sports Illustrated. Yeah. It was worth like $20 or something, or $30. Like, it had no value. But it was like the same thing. It's like, wow, maybe this memorabilia I had is actually worth something. And you're seeing more and more businesses right now that are investing in alternative assets. It seems to be a much growing business. I know there's this company that you can invest in wine, and there's this other company that you can invest in just Pokemon, just random collectibles, Yeezy shoes, this and that. And I guess that some people are gearing more and more toward collectibles that they're able to show off and then sell at a given time, because I guess it's cooler to show off to your friends that I have a Michael Jordan autographed jersey card, not that I own five shares of Facebook.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I saw something the other day. It's like an Instagram ad. You could invest. It was kind of set up like a REIT, but it was for horses, so you could literally buy like 0.2% of a horse or something like that. So
yeah, I was actually talking to this guy who owns a wine investing company is called Vinovest, and you essentially give them some money up front, and they pick certain bottles of wine that they think are going to grow in value, and they say they have on average a 12% return. Now, wine isn't my cup of tea. But, for other people, it might be cool to have bottles of wine lying around, and you show them off, and then you eventually sell them and they grow in value. So there are so many different ways that you can take your skills and take your knowledge on something and find a way to invest it, because if you have it, the chances are that there are other people out there that have the same love for different subject or product.
Yeah, I like that point you made there a lot, because I think when people think of the word like investing, they think it's just boring looking at like graphs and, earnings per share and all that. But it's like, there's different methods where, if you're a guitar fanatic, I'm sure there's some company out there that invest in old replica guitars, and you obviously can get money from that. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually, I actually talked to a guy and, who stages lightings for guitars, and he frames your guitars and he hangs them up, and he, specially dims them. So when people come over, they put the guitar kind of probably along the same lines that you would see in a Hard Rock Cafe. And, you see him in the Hard Rock Cafe and you think you got to have it. So this is what this guy does for your guitar. And then he, shows it off, kind of like staging a house. People come in and they stage a house before you sell it. This is staging memorabilia before you sell it.
Yeah, that's really cool. What a great idea too, by the way. So what was it like? I'd love if you could touch on just the details that you're comfortable with, like lessons you learned from selling your first business. I'm sure there's some things unpacked there.
Yeah, it's funny. There are a couple. The first lesson I learned is being retired or not having anything to do isn't all that fun. I in a sense, kind of closed up shop on it, closed the deal up and closed it on a Friday and, enjoyed the weekend with my friends. And I woke up Monday morning and I said, what to do today? And then Tuesday, what to do today? And then after a week, it just got really old. Yeah. And, everyone thinks selling out for, the money is like, oh, I can, retire. And, it's very unfortunate, to bring this up, but Tony, I'm going to mispronounce his name, but Tony Hoosh from Zappos, he wrote about getting an offer he had a first company called Link Exchange, and he got an offer to sell it for $2 million. And he made a list of what he would do with the money if he got $2 million. And there was nothing on that list that he would do that he couldn't already do with what he had.
Wow.
So, don't sell your business or don't think of getting out of it until you're, eventually either, I don't want to say tired of it, or you think you can outgrow your business and your business is done growing. And that's just what happened with me. I had learned all I could by myself. I was, the people I hired around me, I purposely hired people that were unknowledgeable about the business because I didn't want them coming in and stealing, my ideas and, taking different things that I had developed and running with them. And eventually I felt like I was maxed out. So that's why I sold. But don't go into a business, and other people will tell you, and you'll learn in business school, and investors don't want to invest in a business that doesn't have an exit strategy because they're looking to make 5 to 10 times on their money.
Right.
I kind of look at it the other way. If you're starting a business and you're already thinking about the day that you're going to leave the business, then maybe it's not something you should go into, or maybe it's something that, you should go into real quick and, and make a quick dollar. But it's, it's not something that you're going to be the long-term future of.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think it goes back to like being present in that situation that you're in. If your mind year 2 is already thinking about selling, then I think like the work's going to kind of get affected there a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, so when I started this business, I didn't even think of, what does that mean selling it? Like I really didn't know.
Yeah.
And there were so many things that I look back on that because I was so sheltered. Like, for example, I only ever worked on one computer because I'd never really been to an office because I worked as an umpire and then I worked on this. So I just worked off my laptop. And then I go work at Key Investment Group and they have, a couple screens.
Yeah.
And I go, duh, like having more screens, obviously, like, but it never even crossed my mind. And that sounds so simple, but if you don't get out there, you don't share advice with people, just because someone's in the same industry or trying to do something that you're trying to do, it doesn't mean you guys can't help each other. And I think I was so scared to share with other people what I was doing that I never really took the time to get help from someone.
Yeah.
And who knows, had I got help from someone, it could have grown bigger than It was.
What do you think it would have been like if you kind of did go out more and get help? Have you ever thought about that? Or
you know what? For like a second, because I'm so happy where I am right now with Key Investment Group, point. And we're doing so well as a company, and that I don't try to think about that way. But I think of someone like yourself, for example, who hosts a podcast, and you're really good at it, and let's say you have a couple secrets that you do that maybe to the guests that you don't know. You should be talking to other podcasters and not look at them as competition, but saying, oh, what's this one tip that I could pick up from someone that can help my show? And kind of share tips. There are so many people out in the world. There's so many different people that you could talk to. There's so many different listeners, that there's so much advice to be gained out there, that people should be working together and trying to help each other out.
Yeah, I like that a lot. There's like this common saying out there that's, rising tide, all the ships rise together. I may be butchering that a little bit.
Yeah, I get exactly where you're going with that. And, just even throwing an idea by someone and having someone give you advice and saying that idea is not good or they don't think is good is the best advice you can get. And I'm not necessarily going, oh, you have to fail. But if someone tells you an idea is not good, then you go, oh, perfect. They can tell you when an idea is good. If you listen to someone, and every single person who, you interview, they say, this is the best interview I ever heard. This is the best interview I ever heard. Then you're kind of looking at them and you go, is it? Or are you my biggest fan? If someone listens to your shows and they say, hey, like, I really don't think they're that good, or hey, I don't think they're long enough, or I think you don't ask good questions, and I'm not saying that at all. But if someone gives you that advice, then you go, okay, you can maybe talk to other people in the business and say, hey, like, I really want to pick your brain for a second. Like, would you mind, hopping on a phone for 5 to 10 minutes? And one thing I learned is everyone likes to talk about themselves. So you'll always be willing to get advice.
Yeah, that's such a good point there. I think I made a LinkedIn post about this the other day about, like, hey, don't be afraid to ask for help when you're first starting out.
Yeah. And you should, because, and I'm not saying, necessarily to reach out to people who, if you're selling sodas, don't necessarily reach out to the person who's selling sodas down the street from you. Maybe reach out to someone. If you're selling a product, maybe reach out to someone who's in another state. LinkedIn is such a powerful tool, as you said about posting there. Probably, everyone who's in the business world for the most part has LinkedIn.
Right.
So, go research people research somewhere you want to be and say, hey, I'm just starting up. I have a couple of questions. Do you mind if I pick your brain for 5 or 10 minutes? And I'm sure if you message enough people, you'll be able to get great advice.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And like, each person's going to give you some different kind of value add that you can say, oh, he said this, I'm going to do this. Or he said this, I'm going to do this. So
exactly. You're exactly right.
Yeah, no, most definitely. Well, Evan, what would you say? I always like to ask this kind of ender question here. What would you say, your one word to really just to describe the success that you've had in life so far?
I would say it's discipline.
Nice.
And it's very funny because as a kid, I was the least disciplined person there was. And, I would start a routine and end it. I would, find a hobby for a week and, be all about it for a week. And then the next week, pretend like I didn't even exist. But I was always disciplined in what I wanted to accomplish. And I'm disciplined as an employee. I'm disciplined as a business owner. And being disciplined about what you do, setting a schedule for yourself, especially now when you're working from home and you don't have that supervision, and there's going to be more and more remote work than ever before. And I think that's a trend that's here to stay disciplined. It's the most crucial part. Really put your heart into what you do.
Yeah, I love that. It's funny too how you mentioned you weren't disciplined as a kid, and now you are.
Yeah, I mean, I was the lead, honestly, and I don't want to, knock on myself, but
yeah,
I would be into this for 3 days. I'd be into this for 2 months, and I would just give it up. But I was always disciplined about work, and especially when I started Ticket Insider, I was always disciplined about what I was passionate about, and that's just something that taught me, and I've always made sure to stay disciplined.
Yeah.
And one more thing, when I used to work, when I was running the business and I moved, I rented spot in a WeWork, and I would get to the office every day at 8 a.m. And people would ask me, why do you have to, why are you getting to the office at 8 a.m.? You're your own boss. There's no one, and a lot of people who would work for me, I would, call them and they weren't in the office. Like, why are you getting to the office at 8 a.m.? What's the difference? And because I felt like if I broke the discipline and broke the routine, that, I would never want to go back at 8 a.m. again. So just, again, always being disciplined is the most important thing.
Yeah, no, I love it. I'm such a routine guy myself, man. I think that's so important, especially if you're working from home, man. I mean, don't fall into the laziness trap, which can definitely be so easy.
It's so easy when people aren't, and it's weird. It's not even saying like people who are your boss or work for you. Like when there's not someone creeping over your shoulder. Like if you're the boss at work, you're not going to want to be on Instagram in front of everyone.
Right.
But if you're here and no one's really looking over your shoulder, then it's much easier to just, kind of sneak a couple of peeks. But still always make sure you're staying disciplined because it's crucial.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to just the importance of ownership, like taking confidence in both your successes and your failures out there with your discipline.
Exactly. You've hit it right on the head.
Yeah, I love that. Well, Evan, where can people connect with you? Just learn more about you.
So the best way is just to reach out to me on LinkedIn. First name Evan, Evan. Last name Samet, Samet. With any related questions or comments or anything you want to talk, I check it pretty frequently. So definitely reach out.
Nice. Sounds good, Evan. Well, hey, man, I really appreciate your time, and thanks again for hopping on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, that's it, guys. Thanks again for taking the time to tune into this week's episode of Next Level Minds. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcast and share this episode. Other than that, as we like to say here at Next Level Minds, your mindset is your greatest weapon for the battle of success.